Welcome to ASEAN BIZ, your only choice for business updates covering ASEAN countries. I'm Andrew Chia.
And I'm Eric Chong.
And we bring you business news on everything that happens around the world that affects ASEAN countries.
Our direct main story today is ASEAN Household Debt Alert. But before that, let's look at the current business update on the topic of the importance of English in ASEAN. Okay, Andrew, what can we tell our listeners about the importance
Eric,
of English?
if I remember correctly, this is quite an old topic. We have mentioned this numerous times already.
Yes.
Especially in our country, Malaysia, this is a hot topic every now and then.
And in fact, it's a hot topic in most countries around ASEAN regions.
Yeah, in fact, the whole of Asia, we have a problem with English.
So, what is the government doing about it? And are they paying attention to this dilemma, they call so-called?
For many, many years in Malaysia particularly, because we have a lot of Malays who are not so good with the English language. So the government is trying very hard to improve the standard of English, especially in the rural areas.
Yeah, but then do we see any success in this area?
So far, we have not seen, in the sense that the English standard have not improved, but have become worse as time goes by. And it's now very bad. I've seen books in the bookstores for children in their secondary school still learning things like singular and plural. Is and are, they can't seem to get it.
And in fact, I would say some of the teachers in the schools are not as good as or as competent in their English as well, right?
There's a deterioration in the standard, not only to students, but for the teachers as well. That's why, partly because the teachers are not as good as before, maybe 20 years ago. So now the English standard for the students
definitely
are also,
in that sense.
Not so good.
Alright. So the issues and dilemma of English has been debated for decades in Malaysia. Some ministers will say it's very important due to so many reasons.
Yeah, they know that English is an international language. English is a commercial language, and it's also an official language. And you need to use English for so many reasons. Especially today, we have the internet, right?
Yes.
So the ministers and the government people will say it's very important. So you all must study it and be good at it.
Especially when you started to do international trades around the regions with other countries, European countries and Americans. So if you have a poor English or badly drafted contract, then you are in for a lot of troubles.
Right. The problem is, Eric, before this minister's comments die off, another minister or another big guy will come and give another good excuse why English cannot be emphasized. Such as for people staying in rural areas, language is not really that important.
Yes.
They need to make money, or in Malay we call it cari makan.
Because they need to pacify the rural people.
Yeah, they are not so good with
Not
English.
so good, so it doesn't matter as long as they know how to take their voting papers.
Hey, Eric, please be careful. I mean, as long as they know some everyday Malay language or the national language in Malaysia, they can make some money and put food on the table. That is the emphasis.
Yeah, and then another reason is that it's too difficult for students in rural areas to catch up with the standard of English. The teachers there are not competent at all.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Main argument, Eric, is that there's always talking about the rural areas where the children and the teachers and the parents don't really emphasize on
and I
English.
believe that most teachers, whether in rural areas, urban areas, they go through colleges, universities to get themselves qualified before they call themselves a teacher. And this makes no difference whether they are in the rural areas or in the urban areas. So is that an excuse for being in the rural
coming
area?
to that, the language of instruction in our universities and colleges, they are all Bahasa Malaysia, right?
Yes.
So they are not taught in English. Therefore, the teachers are not really good with that language also.
The latest excuse that appear on the newspaper is that even teachers are not ready to have the language included as a compulsory subject for major exams. They mentioned this in Parliament.
Yes.
I believe that in our days, English is a compulsory subject, isn't it?
Right, yeah, but
And
somehow
how come
along
suddenly
the way,
it's become a non-compulsory subject?
yeah, that means it's not so important. And then sometimes they say, oh, it's very important again. And a week later, they'll say, oh, it's not so important. Something else is more important.
So it's dependent on the shift of the so-called the majorities.
Yeah, we can see definitely there's some politics involved, but our ministries of education are always saying that education will never be politicized. Therefore, it's not politics.
So you believe that's to be true?
I believe this, Eric. For people who are in the rural areas or even urban areas, English is a way for them to really make a lot of money. You know,
Yeah,
when
in a
they
way.
finish their school, so the rural excuse saying that they don't emphasize on English and they can't make it is actually, to me, is an excuse. Because the way to really escape from poverty, English is one of the ways that they can do
Yes,
it, right?
English and a very good command of languages is one of the way to actually escape from poverty and to
Otherwise,
expose
they will
yourself.
always remain poor. in
And
the rural
not
areas.
only in rural areas, recently quite a number of cases in the urban areas, the market centers. In KL, we also face with a lot of people who is not well versed with English or they can't even understand simple English.
Right. From my experience teaching English to the corporate staff for some years, the language and the standard is so poor, most of the people can hardly draft a proper email or write a decent report.
But they are very good at writing SMSs.
All short texts.
Short texts, the SMS kind of email.
So the bottom line is that English provides an avenue to escape from poverty and mediocrity, not only in Malaysia, but in all the developing countries in ASEAN. When we talk about countries like Cambodia, Laos,
Yes.
Vietnam, or Thailand, where English is seldom used and the Thai language is used almost 95 or 98% of the time. So people need to really improve. I believe there are a lot of schools that are very good teaching English.
Yes, and in fact, if they are good in English in their country, they can surpass their peers along the way.
Right, yeah.
And most of them will get to become a tour guide, which they can command good value if they speak proper English.
Right. I come
Right.
across some Thais who are very good with their English, and also some Vietnamese people. They are really good with their English.
Right. And we hope that all countries in ASEAN will pay attention to the importance of English, as it is an international language as well, the most popular language on the internet, the source of knowledge in the world.
Right. There's one special tip I would like to give everybody. You don't need to actually depend on the government or the politics or the, the policies and all that in order to improve our English. We just need to go to the bookstore,
Yes.
buy a lot of English books, the types that you like. If you like stories, novels, fairy tales, Harry Potter, whatever it is, as long as you keep reading, your English will improve.
And watch TV that is in English. Okay.
Yeah, if
don't
you like
change it.
movies.
Don't change it into other languages. I
Yeah.
believe nowadays the TV channels have dual languages. So put it in English mode, and you will improve your English. The
watch
best way
movies.
to improve your English is to listen to news, the newscaster that speak actually proper good English.
Great.
Right.
Right, Eric. We'll be back shortly with more interesting updates on ASEAN. Stay tuned, guys. Welcome back, folks. Before we bring on our main story for this edition, Eric is going to share with us his funny business moment. And the title of his story today is They Got Away.
During a bank robbery, the chief told the sergeant to cover all exits so that the robbers could not get away. 10 minutes later, the sergeant reported to the chief. "Sorry, sir, but they got away." The chief replies, "I told you to cover all exits, didn't I?" "I did, but they got away through the entrance." This is an example of English.
Stupid sergeant. Yeah, The boss says cover all the exits, right?
Yes.
So he covered all the exits.
Exits. But they went through the entrance. So it's the two different things.
It's taking it literally. When boss says cover exits means cover everywhere that they can escape lah. Not only the exits, right?
So instruction not specific. Or the understanding of English is different.
Right. Thank you, Eric, for that funny business moment. Welcome back to the show, guys. You're listening to ASEAN BIZ, your only choice for business updates covering ASEAN countries. I'm your host, Chia, and together with me is Eric Chong. And we bring you business news on everything that happens around the world which involves ASEAN countries.
The title of our Durian main story today is ASEAN Household Debts Alert. Okay, Andrew, what can we tell our listeners on the ASEAN household debts?
For one,
alert?
Household debt is a very important consideration or a factor that is affecting the economy of any country.
It's
When
true.
household debt is too high, then there's danger because the citizens would not be able to service their loan and their interest, right?
And also the bank may not be able to recover their...
Yeah, the banks will suffer losses.
And the government need to bail them out at the same time. So these very alarming figures. There's some very alarming figures. But it goes against the total number of populations against their value.
Right.
So if you have a lower populations and a very high household debts, then you got to watch out.
For a start, let's mention that we are only covering a few countries in ASEAN because some countries like Laos or Cambodia, they don't have much household debt problem because
Yes.
most of them can't
Can't get loans.
banks.
Right.
Okay, it's more what they call advanced countries like Singapore, Malaysia, or Thailand that
So we
people get
we consider Malaysia is a very advanced country.
yeah, very advanced in borrowing
because
money, right?
because of the debts ratios.
Yeah, so because when a country is a bit more advanced, you have more banks and more branches, and people can get access to credit more easily.
And bank would like to make more money by lending you more money, and of course there are more consumer items to be financed.
Yeah, talking about that, household debt is one of the ways that the government of any country can keep the economy moving. Because sometimes you see things like very slow, stock market is slow, and times are bad. So the government will instruct the central bank, which in turn will ask the commercial banks to lend more money.
Lend more money. It's very typical when they sees the car sales drop
Right, exactly.
and the housing drops, housing
car
sales drops.
sales and house sales
Are the main indicators
Indicators
of
of
a lot of
economy.
economies. Even in the Western country, the car sales and the house sales is a major indicator.
Let's talk about car
Right.
sales, Eric.
Yeah.
Those days when we were a little bit younger, we can get car loan if when we buy a car, we have to fork out something like 5,000 ringgit,
Easily,
right, to put a deposit or down
Yeah,
payment for
if
a
you are
car.
buying a more expensive cars, you'll be looking
higher
at about
than that.
20 to 30% of the car value.
Right, and then
Cash
we can
you need
get
to-
loans of say about 3 years, 5 years is very normal.
Very normal. But
Compare with what is happening today.
what happening today is that
You don't need
you
5,000.
don't even need 5,000.
to buy a
Probably
car.
$500. You can come out with $500. You can get a brand new car
I heard some people can get $500 back
from
the car
dealers
for buying a car.
for buying a car, and your loan repayment can stretch up to 9 years. And recently I heard that it can stretch up to 10 years, which is
that's
ridiculous.
quite outdated, Eric. It has
Ah.
been 11 years for many years. And
Oh my
recently
God.
it has been stretched to 13 years.
And can you imagine the insurance company will load your car once your car passed 10 years? So which means to say you face with a loaded insurance premium and your car still have not been fully paid. What an issues.
Yeah, and those days the interest rate were higher, and we have to pay something like 6 or 7%.
So can't blame them because nowadays the car interest is much lower. So the banks or the finance company actually needs to stretch the repayment to make their money back.
So can you imagine, Eric, if the banks don't lend so much money for buying cars, I'm sure the car sales would drop, right?
Yes, and I believe there's a typical situation now in Malaysia that certain car producers are blaming their drop of sales because the bank are not lending.
Which is true,
Right.
but then again, you shouldn't blame the banks for not lending.
Yes,
They've been
because-
lending for too much for too long, right?
For too long, and that particular brand of car actually does not see any improvement in their qualities, which
Are you
shift of
referring to
demand.
our national car?
I didn't say anything. Okay. You see a shift of consumer behaviors. So I think whether you like it or not, the consumer dictates the market movement.
Right.
Whether it's politics or the government policies, bottom line is still the consumer who dictates the movement of the car sales or the house sales.
I believe it's more like the banks dictating all the sales by giving more loans.
More
people can
loans to
afford.
maybe the banks will decide. Let's look at the example of housing. The bank will decide a good developer and a not so good developer. So they will back up a much better developer rather than a more not so good developer. So in a sense that if you buy house, the developer also plays a very main concern for the bank. Right?
Yeah, maybe we don't say not so good. Maybe they have less track record.
Less track record
They
and
completed fewer
or
projects,
probably
right?
a lower integrity.
So let's take a look a little bit further at China. For example, in 2008, their household debt is only about less than 20% of their GDP. Right now, 1 or 2 years ago, it has doubled to 36%. So this means that after 2008, the whole world economy is down, right? Because of the US subprime.
Yes.
So China has been affected. Thousands of factories have closed. And I believe the government, in order to stimulate the economy in China, resorted to giving more credit
More
to their
credits
people.
to their people.
Just like printing money in US, right?
I remember during during the early 2000s, you can hardly get any loans for buying any stuff in China. You know, that's what the feedback from the Chinese told us, that most of the things they need to buy in cash, whether cars or
But
rather
of late,
house.
past few years, you can get loans easily, and suddenly China is flooded with credit, whereby the Chinese people go all over the world, overseas, to shop
Buy.
luxury items. They buy even big items like properties, cars, you know.
And when they buy properties, they don't buy just one unit.
Buy in
Okay,
bulk.
they buy in bulk purchase. Okay.
So where did all the money come from, right?
Yeah.
So it all came from the banks, and the household debt ratio increased correspondingly.
But then we see a drop in India, right? In India, in 2008, is actually closing about 12.
Right, yeah, and it's a country with very
12%.
small household
Right,
debt.
and now it's actually drops to, in 2014, it's actually dropped to below 10%.
I believe, Eric, India, the reason also being that most of the people there are quite poor and they can't afford to get loans from the banks, right?
Yes.
Okay, let's take a look back in ASEAN. Our 5 main countries are Indonesia, Thailand, Malaysia, Philippines, and Singapore, according to their GDP. The top 5 countries, right?
The top 5 countries. We're always at the top 5. No
How
problem.
is Indonesia doing in terms of household debt?
Indonesia is looking at the 10%. If
Which
you
is
look at it,
very
which
low,
is
right?
very low, right? And
That means
if
they
it
don't
goes
borrow much.
correspondingly to the ratio of the population, Indonesia actually have 250 million people in terms of their population size.
Is it the biggest country in ASEAN
I would say yes,
in terms of population,
in terms of populations, and in terms of area also, they are quite big. You know, they makes up for 3,000 islands.
So what
or
makes their household debt so low? What do you think, Eric? It's only 10%. Is it because of the same reason whereby a lot of them are not so rich, that's why they are not allowed to borrow from the
I
bank?
would say firstly it's because of their GDP is quite high, right? Because their GDP is about 900 billion in 2015, right? And their population size also quite high. So when you work that into arithmetically equations, you actually see the 10% is considered quite a good sum, right? So I would say 10%, and also looking at the population distributions, most of the Indonesians are not actually qualified to borrow money.
There's some people say that banks will lend you money if you can prove to them that you don't need
Don't
it.
need it, yes. And if you have money, then only they lend you the money.
Lend you more money.
So looking at the topography of their wealth distributions, the top the rich guy are at the top 10% of their populations. So household debts of 10% for Indonesia should be quite reasonable.
So is Indonesia the lowest in ASEAN in terms of household debt compared to their GDP? No, right?
Not really, because their GDP is quite high also.
Which country is lower than them?
Looking at the whole thing, it looks like it's Philippines.
Yeah, Philippines is only about 8%.
It's only about
even
8%,
lower.
Even lower. And the Philippines population is not that big. It's only about 100 million, right? And their GDP is 370 billion.
Okay, Eric, let me ask you the question. Who is the champion with the highest loan in ASEAN?
I would say it's our beautiful country, Malaysia.
Wow! 3 cheers for Malaysia, right?
3 cheers. But you can't help it because most Malaysia, firstly, have a very low population and the distribution is quite evenly spread out. So a lot of our citizens are qualified to borrow money. Right? And during our earlier sessions, we talked about the cars sales in Malaysia. You can actually get back some cash and don't need to come up with cash and you still can get a brand new car. So these are the situation here, and you can actually stretch your car loan up to 13 years.
So what's the percentage of Malaysia's household debt to GDP?
We are looking at 90%.
Wow, almost 100% already, right?
Close to
Push
100%.
it a little bit more and we'll reach 100%.
And that was 2014 figures.
Right
So probably
now
by
it's
end of
probably
2016, it will be closing close to 100%. Will it surpass 100%?
Why not?
Why not? Okay, possible. Looking at the number of houses that people are buying.
Okay, before we say what is going to happen next, let's look at the number 2 country behind Malaysia.
Okay.
Who is right on our heels?
It's Thailand catching up very fast.
Thailand. And they are having 87% household debt compared to their GDP. Okay. And it's a little bit more distant third is Singapore.
But
Very
Singapore is
advanced
a very,
country.
very low population. It's 5.5 million only, right? But then their population covers 78% household debts. So which means they are all very advanced country.
Yeah, the 3 most advanced countries in ASEAN are none other than Malaysia, Thailand, and Singapore. With Malaysia being the champion in borrowing money. Okay, let's look at what is going to happen if household debt is too high for any country. Not only ASEAN, but also US, Europe, China, any country in the world. What happens if the debt is so high?
There will be a prospect of a global recession is possible in 2016 because countries like the US and Europe are carrying too much debts. Some more than 100% of their GDP, including US, Portugal, Spain, and Italy.
So you mean there are more countries champion than Malaysia?
Definitely. Malaysia is just the tip of the iceberg and they are within the comfort zone.
So when you mention countries like Europe and US, you get cold feet because they are really getting a bit high. But a friend just came back from Europe. He went to Italy to have a vacation. And he says that the countries there are really enjoying themselves. There's no signs of bad economy or recession or anything like that.
Yeah.
Even though the figures we read in the paper show that 20%, 25% unemployment and they are owing so much money.
Hello, friend. When you go to a country for vacation, you only go to
really
those places where you see
things,
people enjoying.
Shopping, right?
So you don't assimilate inside their society. Neither are you assimilating inside their daily life. So if you are going on a vacation, and worse still, if you are on a guided tour, you can't even
all the nice places. Right?
You can't even see the run-of-the-mill things in their lifestyles.
You see only happy people.
You see only happy people. That's
and
the whole
thing. You think
thing.
that the whole country is very happy, right? That's quite normal.
Right, and probably if you go on vacation like Italy, you wouldn't be spending like 1 month, 2 months in the country. You probably just spend about a week there. There's nothing much you can see in a week. Okay, we will take a short break and be back with our short story shortly. Stay tuned, guys.
Welcome back. You're listening to ASEAN BIZ, and our Durian main story today is ASEAN Household Debt Alert. But before we continue with the concluding part of our story today, Eric will give us a quick health tip. And his story for today is staying fit during midlife lowers risk of stroke in later years.
Thanks, Andrew. This report just came out from a study from a Southwestern Medical Center in the United States. Okay, they said staying fit during midlife lowers risk of strokes in later years. Scientists have found that people who stay fit during their midlife, they are looking at age 45 to 50 years, are less likely to suffer from a stroke after the age of 65. We all hear that exercises is good for you, but many people still don't do it. In a prospective observational study consisting of 19,815 adults ages 45 to 50, 79% men and 90% Caucasians, the researcher measures the participants' heart and lung exercise capacity, which we call simple terms cardiorespiratory fitness, and categorize them as having either a high, medium, or low level of fitness. Researchers from the Southwestern Medical Center found that those with the highest level of fitness had a 37% lower risk of stroke after age of 65, compared to their counterparts with the lowest level of fitness. This inverse relationship between fitness and stroke risk existed even after researchers considered stroke risk factors, high blood pressure, type 2 diabetes, and atrial fibrillations. Stroke is the leading cause of serious long-term disability. The information on the effects of fitness on stroke risk, independent of other factors, is limited, researchers noted. The study reinforces the benefits of being physically fit throughout life. Our research suggests that low fitness in midlife is an additional risk to target and help prevent stroke later in life. Researchers used data collected between 1999 and 2009 that measure exercise tolerance with a standardized treadmill test where participants were aged 45 to 50. The American Heart Association recommends 150 minutes of moderate exercise or 75 minutes of vigorous exercise weekly. Researchers say, as a rule of thumb, exercise 30 minutes a day, 5 times a week for better overall cardiovascular health, they said. Thanks, Andrew. Okay, so we are looking at exercises and how many people are doing it.
Yeah, a lot of people give the simple excuse, not enough time.
Yes. Yeah, so when you break it down, it's just looking at 30 minutes a day.
Hey, Eric, a lot of people tell me that they hardly have 3 minutes a day.
But they can have 30 minutes a day or rather 3 hours a day sitting with their friends, talking nothings or
and
talking
30
nuts.
Minutes on Facebook passes by very quickly.
That's true. And not even Facebook nowadays, you can see people on WhatsApp itself that spend hours on WhatsApp also.
But you can't blame them, Eric.
Too many messages to reply.
No, those activities are fun, you know. Exercise sometimes is not fun, except for people like you who really love to exercise. Some people, most people would consider exercise as something which is stands for work.
Yeah, because they have not start yet, because they have not feel the benefits of exercise yet.
Yes.
And also they are not with a crowd of good exercisers. They're trying to do it themselves. Is it for those who are sedentary and hardly exercise? If you think that you can start it by yourself, don't kid yourself, right? Find a group, find a buddy to help you to start together.
Yeah, actually, for a lot of activities, like kicking the habit of drinking or smoking or what, you need things like support groups.
You need a support group.
You have a lot of friends doing the
Yes.
same thing, then you kind of enjoy it.
Yes, and especially if you're talking about cardiovascular exercises, most of the time you'll be doing it yourself or in a group. And if you try to start it yourself, is the chances of you dropping out is very high.
Yeah, and of course, people will try to find many excuses for not starting or not doing exercises. For example, the latest news shows that the Russian lady, she's the oldest woman right now at 120 years old. And can you imagine, Eric, she smokes.
Yeah, it's true.
And she likes things like fried stuff, which is really a no-no. A lot of people will tell you, don't eat fried stuff and all that heady things. It will kill you and you'll shorten your life. This lady is eating all that all her life, and she's smoking away happily, and she's 120 years old. So, what's the secret of living so long? She says she never sits down.
That's the thing.
She always stands the whole day, whether eating, ironing clothes, or doing whatever activities. She's always standing, which means sitting is a very bad
Yes,
activity.
actually, sitting actually kills away the your life. In a way, it shortens your life.
I was told people with occupations like taxi drivers, they get diabetes, they get a lot of sicknesses because they sit the whole day, right?
Yes, that's true. And the best is that the research have found that actually an hour of sitting, it actually kills off 7% of your daily activities. Right? So imagine if you are exercising 1 hour and you sit for 2 hours watching TV. So it takes away 14% of your 1 hour of exercises. So these
now
are
guys
these
who
calculations.
want to be lazy and not exercise can have this excuse. Okay, I'll stand more long. Instead of running around, I'll stand the whole day long.
Yeah, you can stand, you can walk. It doesn't matter as long as you keep yourself active rather than just sitting around as a couch
Standing
potato.
sounds like a little bit easier than running around. or
Definitely,
climbing, right?
definitely. You can start off with standing and walking. That's the whole thing. To get the idea of movement.
Yeah, as long as you live long. Okay, great. Thank you, Eric. That's a great health tip. Let's continue with our main story today. That is ASEAN household debt alert. We have mentioned China has increased their debt double since the subprime crisis. And in ASEAN, Philippines and Indonesia have the lowest household debt ratio compared to their GDP. And the highest, we have to mention again, Malaysia is the champion
among the
borrowing
ASEAN
money
countries.
in ASEAN countries.
And Malaysia at this moment only have 31 million populations. So bear that in mind if you do the arithmetic. Right?
Yeah, I mean, regardless of how big a population or how small a population, if the ratio is so high, there's bound to be trouble, right?
Yes, and we can see that the banks are having difficulties in getting their so-called their customer to pay up.
Yeah. So what happened was during the subprime crisis, the debt ratio in America rose to 100%.
Which means to say that every dollar that particular person owns or earned, actually use it to pay the bank.
So when a country reaches a debt level of, so high, of course there are other countries that have much higher household debt and it did not collapse. So I mean those are maybe special circumstances, right? So we can safely say that for any country with a debt, household debt or whatever debt reaching 100% of their GDP, it's going to be dangerous.
Dangerous, and it should be a red flag.
What happens after that probably is you can see the market collapse, share market collapse, property market collapse, and then unemployment will increase.
So it's back to Stone Age.
Yeah, crime will increase, international trade will decrease and things like that. All the bad things will happen.
And we actually see all these situations in movies, isn't it?
Yeah, and one of the reasons, they don't know behind that, the reason is household debt. You're owing too much money. And of course, corporate debt.
Then one big corporation will come in to buy up everything. And end of the day, they own the whole country.
That's movie, right?
It's movie.
And it can actually happen.
It's actually can happen. And we can see that certain part of certain countries, some of their towns actually been sold. And recently I saw property magazines. Australian property magazines. There's a town for sale in Tasmania. Can you imagine that? And the whole township only have 100 people.
Oh, serious?
And the prospective buyer now is China, right? And the whole town goes for 12 million Aussie dollar. What a good buy. For 12 million Aussie dollar, you can buy a whole town. Okay. Lock, stock and barrel. So these are the situations when household debts are very high.
Yeah, when you owe money, you have to sell something. Even a country we mentioned earlier, the country Argentina was owing so much money, bankrupt, right? So they have to sell their warships and stuff like that, and the president's plane.
Yeah.
So it can be that bad.
So it's just like a game of Monopoly, right? When particular players unable to pay for the rent or got no more money, they got to start selling properties, and those with money will buy up their properties.
Right. So in the end, property is a king, right?
Right.
So
And
let's
cash
look
is
at our
emperor.
3 champion countries, Thailand, Malaysia, and Singapore. I believe these countries being a little bit more advanced and able to lend or borrow money, the government and their central banks are smart enough to realize that it's dangerous to have high levels of debt like that. So what are they doing actually to ease the situation?
They actually control. Firstly, they control the loan disbursement, and also they put a very stringent measures for people to actually qualify for a loan.
Talking about Singapore, we should actually realize that the debt is high, and they put very strict conditions on the ratio of how much you can borrow against your salary or your income.
Yes,
You know, if your
and
income
also
is
your
so
age.
much, your age, you can't borrow so much loan to buy house or car or credit card or whatever. There are very strict rules to make sure the ratio is really kept within control.
So for people like us that we are in a very difficult situation to get any loans, right? Because our time is too short, firstly.
Right, you don't talk about us lah. I mean, folks above 40 years old or 50 years old will find difficulty to get loans,
And
unless it's a short term, 5-10 years, or the most 15 years.
and now houses that can stretch up to what, 35 years?
I heard, I'm not sure whether it's true or not, house loan can go to 70 years.
Oh my God.
In the US, when I wrote a book about the US economy, it was 50 years. Okay, now we are even more champion than
More champion. So
US.
70 years.
Okay. So I'm not sure about Malaysia and Thailand, but Singapore is really doing a very good job. The central bank is really curbing all this credit. But Malaysia, I believe if I'm sure people realize, the people who are in the authorities, they know that if the ratio keeps going past 100%, our economies will be in danger of collapsing. Okay,
Yes.
so I believe the central banks would have given instructions to the commercial banks not to lend so much money.
Yes.
And from the complaints that we receive for the past 1-2 years, people have been getting very difficult to get loan to buy houses and cars.
no amount of donations will actually help solve the situations.
Donation belong to a separate topic, Eric, which is usually covered in the morning.
Right. Okay.
Okay.
So when we look at Indonesia's and the Philippines are the countries in Asia that have the lowest household debts. So, and in the event of a global slowdown, these two countries will have more to leverage on their frugal habits to weather the storms.
Right.
So in actual sense is that we should be more frugal with our spending.
Yeah.
Our lifestyle need to be more basic.
Yes, talking about global slowdown, we have not actually covered that. We are talking about within the country itself.
Within the country itself.
If the ratio is so high, there's a danger. So couple that with international global finance problem, it will really increase the risk of the country getting into chaos.
So let's just, for speculation's sake, should the whole world is faced with a so-called a financial crisis, actually where does the money go?
Yeah, some people asked me this question earlier.
Did it go to another planet?
In the first place, before you ask that question, Eric, we should ask, where did the money come from earlier?
I mean, from the paper mills and the printing machines.
Yeah, exactly. All this debt is created from thin air. Okay, it's just a number, it's just a figure in a bank account, and then the banks can let you use the money. So it was created in the first place. So when it collapses, it's just back to square one only, or roughly around like something like that.
So we got to go back to our early days, Stone Age days.
So that money didn't actually travel to another planet, because that money originally was plucked from thin air.
From thin air, so it goes back to thin air.
Yeah, you look at the properties, for example, a house some years back may cost about 300,000, and then somebody starts to speculate, it goes up 400, 500, and it reaches almost 1 million, right?
Yes.
In our country itself. So I ask you back the same question. How did a house that is 300,000 become 1 million?
Speculations.
So when is 1 million back to, it won't be back to 300,000, probably back to 500 or 600,000. that balance is lost back to thin air.
Back to thin air. So we would like to urge all the countries in ASEAN to spend on necessities and to practice frugal ways in 2016.
Right. That is the best advice, Eric, I believe.
Yes, and but sad to say, we see that a lot of countries, especially our advanced countries, a lot of us luxurious items are coming up, luxurious cars are coming up.
Everywhere in the world, advanced countries need a lot of debt to survive.
To survive on the luxurious item. Ask them to go back to a frugal lifestyle. He said, better
But,
you kill me.
Eric, it's all down to definition. When you have no money, a lot of things are luxuries. But when you have a lot of money, the luxuries become necessities. For example, membership in a fitness center. Would you call that a luxury or a necessity?
During those days, it was a necessity. It was a luxury.
Right. Yeah. Today, a lot of people would consider that a necessity, right?
To a certain extent, it's a necessity, and to a certain group, it's a glamour thing to hold on.
Right. Yeah.
They will sign up for membership, but they don't go to the gym.
But look at it this way: how did the people earlier keep themselves fit and healthy?
They just do
They
more
didn't
work.
spend money. They
don't
just
need to
do
spend
more
money.
work. They run around in their own homes or condos or out in the field, right?
Less TV, less internet.
Yeah, today you need dumbbells, you need treadmills and all those stuff, which earlier they didn't need.
Yes, that's true.
Okay.
So it boils down to consumerism.
Right, yeah. So a lot of things are, the definition of luxury and necessity can be quite confusing at times.
Yeah. Well, to the rich, a Lamborghini is a necessity.
Right, yeah.
Yeah. And in anticipation of a global economic slowdown, you would be that much better off with this strategy and discipline.
Exactly, yeah. Like we mentioned, it's the best advice. So guys, be careful if you're from these few countries with high levels of debt. Please control your spending. Try to live frugally. I mean, not to stinge on everything. Please buy me and Eric lunch once in a while. It won't cost you much. Okay, but other than that, please keep more money in the bank for that rainy day.
Yes. So, all right, folks. That's all the time we have for today. We hope you enjoy our show. We'll be right back with a brand new stories for our Durian Main story on ASEAN Biz in the next edition.
Thank you and goodbye.